Class, this week we're talking a lot about variables, and neither of your textbooks does a really good job of explaining them. So let's talk a little bit about the variables in your research question. Variables come in two forms: independent variables and dependent variables. The independent variable is sometimes called the treatment variable. That's the variable you think might be making a change, and it can often be manipulated. I'll show you an example in a moment. The dependent variable is sometimes called the control variable. That's the variable that might be changed, and it changes as a result of the independent variable. Let's take a look at some examples because I think that's going to help you understand. So let's say this is our question. Can high school GPA, class rank, ACT score, socioeconomic status, and participation in athletics predict freshman to sophomore retention of college students? So that might be a question that we would be interested in if we were working in the college setting. Our variables need to come right from the research question. Now, what I want you to notice is that there could be all kinds of things that influence freshman to sophomore retention. It could be things like they broke up with their girlfriend and boyfriend, their parents moved to a different town, they have high math scores. There could be all kinds of factors that influence freshman to sophomore retention. But in our research question, we specifically ask about these things: high school GPA, class rank, ACT score, socioeconomic status, and participation in athletics. Those are our independent variables. Remember that the independent variable is the thing that you think might make a change. And there are things that can be manipulated. So a student could earn higher GPA or lower GPA, and you want to know, how is that GPA affecting retention? Retention then is the dependent variable. That's the thing that might be changed as a result of the independent variables. So these independent variables, you want to know changes in these. How does that impact the dependent variable of retention? Let's look at another one. Here's a question that I've seen a number of times. Does the use of iPads during silent reading time improve the motivation of my fourth graders to read independently? So remember, we're looking for at least one independent variable and one dependent variable. The independent variable is the thing that you're suspecting might make a change. In this example, it's the use of the iPad. You want to know, does the use of the iPad change motivation to read independently? So the independent variable is the thing that you could manipulate. You could add iPads or you could take out iPads. The dependent variable is what you wonder might actually be changed as a result of that independent variable. Let's look at this question and take it a step farther. This question asks, does goal setting for developmental reading assessments contribute to moving up levels versus previous school years without goal setting? So in other words, if I include my students in setting their own personal goals for their reading level, does that help them make improvements as opposed to me as the instructor just telling them what their goals should be? So remember, lots of things can change students' reading level. There are all kinds of possible variables here, but we have to go right to our research question, and those are the variables we're studying in this research. In this example, our independent variable, the thing we're trying to manipulate, the treatment, the thing that we're changing, is the use of goal setting. When we set that goal, we want to know, how does that change our dependent variable, which is the student's reading level? Let's walk this through a little bit further to show you how the cycle goes. I have told you that when you determine your research question, You have to collect data and you have to analyze data on every question. In this example, we need to figure out where students started out last year, previous school years, what was their level maybe between August and December, and then when we add this treatment of goal setting, what do their reading levels look like then? Let me show you how I would collect data on that. First, we need some baseline data, last year's data without the use of students' participation in goal setting. So I may, in an Excel document, record my students. I can record them by name or I can be anonymous. And I would want to know their level in August and their level in December, or however you're doing it with your assessments, to see from August to December, this would be a usual amount that students would improve in levels. That's before my treatment. This year, I'm going to apply the treatment of goal setting. Remember, that's my independent variable, the thing I'm manipulating. So this year, in August, when my students come to school, and then maybe every week, I'm going to have my students participate in goal setting. So I'll still take that beginning level, that August level, and then every week or however often we're going to apply the treatment. In December, I'm going to record their levels just like I did in the prior year to see how much they have improved. Here is where we look at our results. We see that in the baseline year, before we had our treatment, our students improved from August to December almost 10 points. In our treatment year, when we had students use the manipulation of goal setting, our students improved from August to December 14 points. Now, a note of caution here. Clearly, when we look at this, we can see that students improved more in our year where we used goal setting, but we would probably want to use some statistical analysis like a means test to help us figure out if that would be considered a significant change. That's beyond the scope of this course. Remember that I said there are a lot of potential variables. Some things that could influence our results in this research question could be like students' language acquisition. If I have a lot of students who are English language learners, I might find they have a different result with goal setting than my students who are native English speakers. Another factor or variable that might influence my findings would be socioeconomic status. Perhaps my students who are come from a high income family, they may respond better to personal goal setting or not as well to personal goal setting as my students with a different SES. Gender, maybe boys respond better to the competition or girls respond better to that self-competition, or maybe there's no difference. Cognitive ability and disabilities, maybe my students who have an intellectual disability or a reading disorder, they may not have the same results as everyone else. Birth order, maybe those oldest children who are just naturally goal setters, they may make great strides when you include them in goal setting. And if you don't have them involved in goal setting, they don't. As well, just their personal level of motivation. What I want you to notice here is that there are all kinds of variables that could impact your results. But if these aren't in your research question, they're not the variables you're studying. Now, here is one of the wonderful things about action research. If you were asking this research question and you were doing traditional formal research, you would say, it doesn't matter that there are these other factors that might impact my result. I am not looking at them because I didn't state them in my research question. But with action research, you're not looking to publish an article in a journal necessarily. You just want the answer to your question. So as you are collecting your data, you may say, I notice that my English language learners really didn't make as much in the way of an improvement with goal setting as my native English speakers. And then you could dig into that. Or I noticed that my students who are just naturally motivated students, they seemed to really respond to goal setting, and my other students didn't. So even though it wasn't explicitly in your research question, in action research, you can be a lot more flexible. But initially, these things are not in your research question, so they were not the variables that you stated at the beginning. There are also all sorts of factors that threaten the validity of our research. So other things could be happening in our classroom that were not stated in our research question. They're not the variables we're looking at, but these things could make a difference to how well my treatment worked as well. Maybe I had a student teacher, and maybe my students were so thrown off by the student teacher that goal setting didn't make any difference because that student teacher just, the impact of that was so great that my treatment didn't work. Maybe I left on maternity leave. Maybe I just had a particularly difficult class. Maybe I had a lot of talented and gifted students in my class, and so setting goals really worked. And it wouldn't work as well for a different composition of class that maybe didn't have so many tag kids. Maybe I made a change to my reading curriculum. And the real reason my students made greater strides in reading this year than last year wasn't about goal setting. It was that I changed my curriculum. Maybe there was a change to the assessment. Last year I used this test from August to December, and this year I used a different test. That could definitely change my results. Maybe this year I unfortunately could only allocate 60 minutes to reading during the day, and last year I could do 90. That would definitely make a difference in reading scores that had nothing to do with goal setting. Or maybe I moved reading from the morning to after lunch when my kids were more antsy or tired. The bottom line here is this. The independent and dependent variables are always found in your research question, and you collect data on those variables. But as an action researcher, you have the flexibility and the freedom to be mindful of other variables and factors that might influence your results. If you have questions about this, let me know in the questions thread. I look forward to hearing them.